When most people think about architects, they just think about someone who designs and draws plans of houses and other buildings. And although that is true, we do so much more than that. When I was about to choose my career, it was really not clear what it takes to pursue that profession. Today I break down the, for me, 5 most crucial things you should be into if you want to be an architect. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Matt and I have been an architect and designer for the past 10 years, in which I have studied and worked with Zaha Hadid as well as Kazuya Zejima before I finally started to work on my own. Over 10 years ago, I wish I had someone who could have told me what you need to be a successful architect. I had no idea what it takes until I already studied a few years already. Therefore, today I want to tell you from my perspective what it takes to be an architect and what traits in your personality you should be looking for to find out if you are made of architect material. By the way, if this is already the second or third video that you're watching on this channel, consider it as a sign to subscribe. So let's say you're an architect and you get approached with a new project. The client essentially presents you with a set of requirements and challenges that you're asked to find solutions for. If you go down the rabbit hole of mapping out all the fields an architect is touching when making a building become a reality, we will find out very quickly that it doesn't just stop with simply design, but includes human behavior, economics, engineering, geography, and law, just to name a few. Only all of these elements combined allow for a successfully completed project. Challenges can include requests about design, function, layout, budget, deadlines, which are all points that have to be thought about and dealt with simultaneously. Therefore, as an architect, you are not just a designer, you are also an investigator, someone whose job it is to find the best available solution for a specific problem. Problem solvers think about problems as a way to grow. Often they're motivated, and that also probably counts for me, by the single thought that it can be done, almost like a game where you are looking to solve the level to get onto the next one. The underlying attitude is usually that with adequate time and preparation, the right answer will come eventually. If you think you have these traits in your personality, congratulations, you are closer to be meant to be an architect. So if you've ever met an architect or you're one yourself, you know that we have a compulsive need to design and create, no matter in which medium, physical or digital. And in fact, some of the architects that changed our perspective of the world the most actually started making things in other fields, not always related to architecture. And I think one of the reasons they had such an impact was that they brought a different perspective to the table. If you look at Zaha, for example, she actually studied math before she moved to London to study architecture. Later at the AA, she utilized her passion of painting and her knowledge in math to design buildings in shapes that have never been seen before. Her partner Patrick Schumacher, on the other hand, studied philosophy and applied that a few years later to their project. His philosophy background propelled their build-up of a catalog of quite complex formal and spatial elements that didn't just look pretty but also had a lot of thinking behind. And besides that, he's obviously a very eloquent person that knows how to market himself and his office. I'm pretty sure that all the writing and lectures had quite an impact on their stance in the architectural world, which comes from his philosophy background. Some other examples are Tadao Ando, which has a background in boxing, math and carpentry. That's quite unusual, right? And there's also Frank Gehry, which was making models out of metal waste since he was a kid. Or Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, which studied at trade school and later was a mason. There are plenty of other examples like real estate developers and artists that started to make architecture. So I guess in some of those, it's pretty obvious how their previous experience has influenced them in their architectural style. But the point I want to make here is that all of them started to make things in other fields. It wasn't always a building at first. And there's actually another one coming to my mind, which is Thomas Hedderwick. But they found their way towards architecture and their unique perspective shaped their projects in an interestingly new way. If I look back at myself, maybe today not so famous architect, but a probably more relatable case, I have always liked to draw a lot, which started in kindergarten and later continued in school. I was actually a terrible student because I couldn't concentrate for more than a half hour. But I really liked to use my imagination. I liked to build things out of Lego, which later became things out of wood, which later shifted to everything related to digital, like visuals, web pages and music. So if you feel the need to create no matter in which medium, watch out, you probably should be an architect. So architecture is a very broad subject that you could never learn completely. There's really no point in memorizing everything. You will be developing your understanding as long as you're practicing or even as long as you live. To put it in other terms, architecture is a reference profession. And architects really shouldn't try to memorize everything. They only need to know where to go to find a reference or information they are looking for. Therefore, all architects, you could say, are generalists by default. We generally know a little bit about many different subjects to be able to guide our team that is knowledgeable in depth on specific topics. As you go on, you will become a specialist naturally. Every architect has a handful of topics that they are really interested in and they specialize on. These topics could include design, detailing, teaching, solar, history, timber, steel or concrete construction, shells, tiny houses, waterproofing, building envelopes, masonry, literally anything. This list can go on forever and is one of the beauties of being an architect. But if you're going to be a generalist or a specialist, has also to do with for whom you're going to work for. In general, I would say the larger the office you work for, the higher the probability that you will be a specialist. The smaller the office, the more likely you will become a generalist because you need to handle a lot of different things yourself. If you take, for example, my experience with Zaha, the architects, it was kind of a given that after finishing Zaha's masterclass in Vienna, you get a job in London. But what I quickly realized was that if I go to Zaha's office, I probably would be doing the same over and over again, which was 3D modeling, because this is kind of what they trained us for in university. Because I knew I wanted to be self-employed one day, I really did only like 1 year internship and called it a day. I also didn't work much longer in other offices. It just simply turned out to be always the same without learning much new things. I always was actually quite interested in the business side of architecture, but never found ways to get into it or learn about it. So if you're the curious type and you're always hungry to learn something new, then watch out. You probably should be an architect. So number 4, resilience. So what is actually resilience? When we are resilient, we possess the ability to cope with challenges. It's about how quickly we can bounce back and stay on track and manage our emotions. When we study and work in architecture, it usually means we will face a lot of stress and pressure. If we can navigate those tough times without causing further angst for ourselves, like getting nightmares or panic attacks or anything else that might throw us off, then we are resilient. That being said, stressful situations in architecture could be last-minute changes to our project, or a situation where our computer is not responding just before a presentation, or we need to present in front of a large crowd. Out in the field, it could mean material didn't arrive at the site or construction mistakes happen, causing that we need to talk to the stakeholders and explain the situation. If we are able to cope with the unexpected and uncertain that might throw off our work or our project anytime, you are perfect fit for an architect, because screw-ups will happen and will happen often. In fact, especially for us architects, our resilience is already tested here in university. You will have a shit ton of work to do, courses to visit, projects to work on, and finally not just to hand a piece of paper in, but actually present the whole thing in front of a crowd. If you are up for this ride, then, but only then, consider to be an architect. So, and the very last point, which I think is absolutely crucial for any architect, is a great ability to communicate. And this is something that I'm actually often struggling myself. In general, I think we architects love to overcomplicate the way how we talk. We say stuff like deconstruct, typology, bifurcate, dichotomy, which we architects might know what it means, but for anyone else is absolute nonsense.
What's the matter with you?
One important part in architecture, and we have talked about it already, that we need to communicate with a lot of different people. And one thing to understand is that none of them actually use the same language. Cutting out all the fancy vocabulary that they taught us in university might be already a starting point, but there are also some other things to consider. The engineers will use a different vocabulary than the people paying for the project, which are again going to talk differently than the construction worker on site. And we need to sell our project, our ideas and solutions to all of them. So if you're someone that talks with people with ease and has no problem to crack a joke here or there, which sometimes is also important, and maybe crossed also all of the other 5 points, then stop what you're doing, sign up for my channel, and then afterwards to architectural school. Thanks for watching and see you next time.